Denial. All right, everyone, welcome back. Picking up work after the floor. We are joined by our illustrious councilman, Tucker Anderson, to continue work on S59, the open meeting law bill that we've been working on for a while now. And we have on the document section of our homepage, some items to review with council. Council, it is yours.
Good afternoon. For the record, Tucker Anderson, Legislative Counsel, apparently illustrious. You have in front of you committee's proposed strike all for S59. I will walk you through the committee's proposed changes and just note that if it's not highlighted, it is the language as passed by the Senate. And if at some point you would like, we can go back through the entirety. We will jump right into section 2 of the bill. And we're going to start on page 2, but quickly work our way into page 3 where the committee's amendments are. So if you're with me on page 2 in subdivision 3. In subdivision 3, this is the hybrid meeting requirement, just to reorient everyone, which applies to state public bodies. And what the committee has proposed to do is in subdivisions B and C of subdivision 3, top of page 3, first, to add the word state before public body to ensure that throughout this subdivision, it is clear that the public bodies we are talking about are state public bodies. And then further belts, suspenders, parachutes, and other safety devices, we have added the following language. First, a subdivision heading that states application of subdivision, state public bodies only, followed by this subdivision 3 applies exclusively to state public bodies. So the heading for the subdivision throughout each of the subdivisions within the subdivision, and now in this new subdivision C, we are expressly stating that the hybrid meeting requirement applies to state public bodies. And hopefully moving forward, this will be very clear that local public bodies are not captured by the hybrid meeting requirement.
Any questions on that piece? It does not appear.
Same page within subdivision 6. To reorient you to subdivision 6, this is the recording requirement for local public bodies. This is the requirement that for any meeting of a public body, except advisory bodies at the local level, that there's a requirement that the meeting be recorded and posted to a designated electronic location. The committee's proposed amendment on page 3, line 19, is to clarify that the local public body shall record or cause to record any meeting of the public body. You continue on to page 4 at the end of this subdivision. It states that this subdivision A shall not apply to gatherings of a public body for purposes of a site inspection or field visit. So the requirement for recording the meeting and posting will not apply to those site inspections or field visits.
I just want to make a comment for the committee that the Secretary of State's office is going to come in to talk about that particular language tomorrow morning at 9:30. They could not be here this afternoon. In case we have any questions, sorry.
Yeah, no, that was pertinent information.
Started rolling by saying the word on and it cut off and I sounded like a goose. So to continue on page 4, where you already are, line 16 within subdivision C2. The committee is proposing an update to the posting requirement for notices of the time, place, and purpose of special meetings. Under current law, it's required to be posted at the municipal clerk's office and in at least 2 other designated public places in the municipality and here or a neighboring municipality. We continue on to page 5. In subdivision D1B, you have the same amendment for the posting of agendas for regular or special meetings, neighboring municipalities. Right, subdivision D3 on page 5. As passed by the Senate, S59 contained some requirements for how planned executive sessions are described on a meeting agenda. Committee is proposing that not only will it be labeled as a proposed executive session, but that the agenda will indicate the nature of the business of an executive session. This language, by the way, is the exact same language that is used to describe what a motion to enter executive session must contain. An indication of the nature of the business of the executive session. So hopefully, public bodies in Vermont will see this and note that there's a through line between what they are going to post on their agenda for a planned executive session and essentially what is going to be in their motion. Still within 1 VSA 312 in the training section. So you had testimony last week asking for language about training for study committees that are comprised of non-governmental members. So this subdivision C, the members of a state advisory body, provided that the advisory body is composed entirely of members who are not government officers or employees, would be required to take the Secretary of State's training. And for reference, the existing list of individuals that must take the Secretary of State's training. It's for municipalities, the chair of the legislative body, the town manager and the mayor, and for the state, the chair of any public body that is not an advisory body. And this would add the members of a state advisory body, provided that the body is composed entirely of members who are not government officers or employees. All right, final set of amendments proposed by the committee here is on page 7. This is within section 3 of the bill, which amends 1 VSA 313. That's the executive sessions section. Within subdivision 10, you have added cybersecurity as a basis for entering executive session under that subdivision. So information relating to cybersecurity, the disclosure of which could jeopardize public safety, would be a basis. In subdivision 11, there are proposed updates to the basis for entering executive session relating to publicly financed loans and the interest rates for publicly financed loans. This has been updated to make the language more specific to the instances the committee was discussing last week. Subdivision 11 now reads that enter executive session, discuss confidential business information relating to the interest rates for publicly financed loans. And then there's going to be a proviso here, provided that the public body is a state public body and the creditor for the loan. Public body has to be a state public body and the creditor in this case. It should eliminate any potential interpretation that this relates to instances when a public body is a borrower. And based on the committee's discussion last week, limiting it to state public bodies so that there's no interpretation that this would, for example, be brought up many times, a municipality borrowing for purposes of its town highways. You're eliminating political subdivisions and you're eliminating any interpretation that this applies to indebtedness. This is a state public body issuing a loan.
Thank you, Zara. Now, any questions for Tucker right now? We've spoken to these changes for a while, so wanted to get them on to a new draft for us to review and digest. So thoughts?
No.
Yes, Representative.
So if I'm reading this correctly, then this clears up the issue that that group had of having their retreats.
I'm looking to the representative from the group who had the issue with the retreats, and he is smiling and nodding from the gallery. Yes.
Chad Simmons, Vermont Housing Finance Agency. Yes, it does take care of the issue that.
Perfect. Excellent. I love smiling and nodding from the gallery in a positive fashion. And so
Also,
I'm sorry, did you have something else?
yeah, I'm just saying it in that last section for the clears up the concerns we had from it who it was, she was. Or they were worried that it was the town loaning money or the town borrowing money and
Oh, back to the,
clarifies that it's only for the state public body when they're a creditor, not borrowing money and putting the town into debt.
yes, and that is a final piece on page 7, line 6. Confidential business information relating to the interest rates for the public or for publicly financed loans. Granted that the public body is a state public. And the creditor of all liens.
On
Remington.
page 5, section B, we go from mandatory 3 notices within the municipality or whatever the jurisdiction, down to the possibility of 1 actually within the boundaries.
Are you talking about the change on line 6?
Line 6, page 5.
Yeah, so the whole line is in the case of a municipal body posted in or near the municipal office and at least 2 other designated public places in the municipality. Or, yes, so it's 2, yeah,
Speak great words.
2
So,
other designated places.
and I can see if you're gonna post it at the dump that's in the next town, but if you're posting it at someplace not frequented by residents of the town, it effectively cuts the notice by 2/3. Possibly. Posted notices.
I'm trying to unpack your logic on that.
If 2 out of the 3 are posted in a wonky
That's
place, I
like,
think it's.
yeah.
Why go from 3 notices down to 1?
So
Which one?
Sandy first, then Lucy.
Because there are some towns who don't have 3 places to post. So,
Yeah.
so they really wanted the ability to be able to post 3 and.
You might not.
And so it was they were talked about posting it into like the general store, the neighboring town or someplace. I have to say a town person that's gonna be doing the posting is gonna post it where nobody's gonna see it.
I wanted to say that, but I saw your hand go up, so I gave you the turn.
Yeah, we're gonna post it where the most traffic's.
Yeah. Boyd?
Yeah, I was basically just gonna say what Representative Pinstall said, that there's a lot of towns where they only have a municipal building, they may not have a general store or library, nothing else, so. They're folks to be going to other towns. And still see the mistakes.
Council, it's any relief, these are designated locations, so the legislative body or whatever the particular public body is gonna be must adopt a resolution designating the location before they posted it.
Okay.
I love it, like both of you are like in my head. And yeah, so that, I mean, that's the thing, is it's a known spot to the public that is used consistently. Yes.
Is that resolution required to be posted on a website or within the town hall? or anywhere, so then it's transparent about where folks can then find postings.
I'm not immediately aware of a statutory requirement that resolution designating, for example, these locations or, what is it, the newspaper in general circulation, that be proactively posted. But it's a public record that could be demanded by members of the public. My town definitely posts all of the actions of the legislative body, for example, on the town website.
Mhm.
We are one of the towns where there is most certainly really one place, the town hall. Town.
Okay. What is the? Theme music in my head, I had a camera here. The advisory board, but. Yeah. We do have. What time is the? 2:30, that's right. Yeah. Might as well zing him if he's got a few minutes or the capacity to come a few minutes early, sure. But he seems to be understanding.
And do we do a stall?
Oh, no, this is our bill. Oh, no. This is formal as formal gets. But we're not done. We have the David Fox Sheriff from Rutland County coming in to talk about that proposal that Representative Harrison was discussing about the disruptions at meetings. That language is not in here, but we want to talk about that a little bit more. And then we have the Charlie Baker from the RPCs coming in at 3.
About the language that we had highlighted, that I said the Secretary of State's coming in tomorrow, got to have the same that ask. And we just need to learn a little more about it.
The town events and sometimes they lock down because they have this disruptive. Town member. That's which is part of
Yeah,
it.
yep.
Office with that up right now.
Had lots of conversations in this committee about that town office. I believe last year it was a point of conversation within the structure of another bill that Representative Harrison introduced. If memory serves me correctly. Yeah.
We haven't done that this year.
Okay. Should I don't know if Jim was following.
Well, I think Jim is with Shay.
He just ran around the corner in a few minutes.
Sheriff, how are you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. How are you?
A little technical difficulty there.
No worries. Looks like you navigated it. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
So, we were entertaining some language for our open meeting law bill that Representative Harrison had brought before us. And we were looking to see if you could offer insight and sort of like lived experience, situational experience, or in and around what it's trying to address.
Yes, I mean, we have similar situations in other towns. Not generally on a constant, weekly or bi-weekly basis, but where we run into where we're contacted to attend meetings because they have people that are disruptive, during meetings. We always fall into the area of like, well, it's a public meeting, it's a public hall, and where things should go from there. And the person in particular that Jim is referring to is familiar with law, I should say, and can figure out how far he can go, and to try to stay just on the edge of being a problem for, well, he still is a problem, but getting himself into trouble.
Okay, so that individual, what are the other scenarios that you're running into?
We often, I know, one of our other towns, we cover a lot of town meetings for this reason, where they have disruptions of people's in their meetings. And occasionally we'll get other calls throughout the year to attend meetings where they have someone that's been a problem in a prior meeting, and they're just trying to avoid any further problems with this person. Oftentimes the presence is enough for deterrent in some cases. Other cases, the people just quite frankly continue with their behavior.
How frequently are you running into these scenarios?
We do, the town that Jim's referring to, for every public meeting that they have, which I believe at this point it's 2 a month. Their select board meeting, and I believe they have, I can't remember what the other one is, but we're at all their meetings for that issue.
And is this something that you have to contract out with them, or is this part of like your general service? Does this come at a cost to a municipality to have your folks there?
They do have a contract with us for patrol services. We do bill it to that contract, but it's actually not a patrol time because we're attending the meeting. They've decided that's how they want to use some of their contract, is to cover that type of events. So they're, have a law enforcement on scene during the meetings. So they do use some monies for that are generally put towards law enforcement and speed and contracts items. So
Representative Hager.
Thank you. So in lieu of these officers being out on patrol in the community, they're actually sitting at a meeting, waiting for a disruption to happen and basically keeping the meeting open to the public so folks feel safe at that meeting. Is that what's
Correct.
happening?
yes.
Thank you. Can you describe to the committee at all any of the altercations that you have been witness to?
I haven't been to the meetings. I haven't witnessed it. I've spoken with my deputy that attends the majority of the meetings.
Mhm.
It's just, loud, talks over the board members, kind of keeps the whole meeting in upheaval. Doesn't necessarily yield his time when, they have public speaking at the beginning, and he will interrupt during any conversation when they're trying to get business conducted, and just throws the whole meeting off, far as, not being a participant that has something that they really need to say. It's just a disruption.
And have they had to shut down any meetings because they can't continue?
I know on occasion we have had to escort him from the building, this person, due to the fact that they were getting to the point of like it was overbearing everything else. I am not sure if they've had to, I know for a while they were doing remote for this reason. So they weren't present in the building. They were doing remote meetings, which he will also attend. the majority of the time, I believe.
And would he have, would this person have disrupted a remote meeting, or did they have an ability to, mute this
I,
person? Or you
yeah,
don't know?
I can't answer that one. I'm not
Okay.
sure.
I have one more question, and that is, have you had members of the public express that they are concerned that either they will get followed to the parking lot by these individuals or to their home, that somebody's going to show up to their home?
I know that there has been comment and altercation verbally in the parking lot prior to and after meetings. And also some of the select board members, I don't know if they're currently members, were concerned that this person may show up at their residence to continue some sort of problem that they had during a meeting.
Thank you. It's my understanding that this is a real thing that happens. So
Yes,
thank
very,
you.
very much so.
It sounds like a lot of these incidents involve one person. What is limiting those affected from putting in a restraining order for that one person? It doesn't sound like from those stories that it was a lot of different people.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I believe they may have looked into that, but that didn't qualify as a public meeting. They weren't specifically attacking one person in a manner that would grant the order. It was just disruption of the whole meeting. To get a stalking order, the person would have to feel, that this person was directly threatening them in a manner that they felt that, something could continue. And I believe a couple were sought, but I don't believe they were granted. And I can't quote that for 100%, but I know that was had talk of that.
As well.
Yes, that was my question. I was wondering why they couldn't have a restraining order to keep him off the property, but if he's not making individual threats, then there probably isn't. The guy's not.
Yeah, I believe for a while that he commonly would request documents, like multiple documents, which would take up a lot of time. And they did have at one point, he had to alert them that he was coming to pick up documents, so we would have to break from our patrol to be at the office when he arrived to get those documents, so the staff felt safe. And he would be allowed in the building to get those documents at that time.
Please.
So is it my understanding at this point in time, I heard earlier, that the town office, is not entirely open to the public because of these incidences, so people need to make appointments to come in?
They were making appointments. I don't know if they're still conducting business that way. They have the exterior door, I believe, is locked, and they have a buzzer to allow people in. And they were doing appointment. I'm not sure if they're continued with that.
Thank you.
The other immediate questions for the sheriff right now? So one of the select board members, Sarah Buxton, was just texting me. She was watching the testimony and is actually very, very close by. And since she was gonna head down and pop in and offer some input if that's amenable to the committee. Representative Harrison, is there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, Representative Jim Harrison from Chittenden.
Please grab the chair if you'd like, or
No, I just wanted to thank Sheriff Fox for willingness to carve out a few minutes of time this afternoon to testify on some of the situations that we're facing locally. Really appreciate the help. And I'm sure before I came in, the committee probably told you that how fortunate Rutland County was to have both you as the sheriff and member from Chittenden representative. Did they say that?
We totally
No.
buttered that bread.
I actually
Yes.
did not say that.
Specifically heard
I
it.
thought it loudly.
We buttered both sides of that bread.
Just kidding.
Okay. Well, if we don't have anything, oh, Representative Hagan, gonna ask.
I don't know, I just wanted to make a comment that as a public official, there have been times that I have been in that type of position, and it is very frightening. And when you feel like your security at your home is threatened, it's a real thing. So I just wanted to put that out there. That was my line of questioning with all of this. And it's not, I don't take it lightly. So happy that Representative Harrison brought this to our attention, that this is going on.
Yeah, and I know the town has had numerous resignations from the board
Yeah.
and had difficulty filling the seats due to the barrage from the individuals at meetings. They didn't want to put up with that type of activity.
Yeah, we did hear that in an earlier testimony, but thank you very much for reiterating. That's a very important point. I'm gonna go Rep. Boyd and then Pisnell.
This might be a question more so for Tucker, but I had a similar experience and had a personal meeting with my sheriff, and they mentioned that the way that current statute is created and stated, that the public has certain abilities to communicate with elected officials. I don't know if that was just at the state level or also like goes down to municipal officials as well. Yeah, answer that.
Tucker Anderson Legislative Council, so there are First Amendment rights that are entangled with an individual's ability to contact government officials. Specific to state representatives, there is Article 20 of the Vermont Constitution, which protects the individual citizen's right to petition and instruct their representatives, capital R, in the General Assembly. So there are a few different speech rights that are entangled here. And I don't know all of the case law and some of the granular detail that it gets into, but in general, you can think of it that in your capacity as an officer of the state government, and for those local officials in their capacity as officers for municipal government, there's very few ways to block an individual member of the public from directly contacting you in your capacity as a governmental officer. It's once they venture outside of that confine that they subject themselves to potential criminal or civil liability for conduct, whether that be speech in case of harassment or actions such as following, stalking, things like that.
And Rep. Pisnell, the Nugent.
I was just reading the section on the 312 on the right to attend. Would it be out of our, I definitely don't go to judiciary, but could there be something in there that if you're more disrupted more than X number of time, I mean, it's a public hearing and it's your right to attend. But if you continue to be disruptive after so many times, can you then just be banned? I mean, is that not germane to put into?
That would be a question for council on the scope of the legality.
And
of that.
again, when it comes to public record requests, I mean, there are some people that just like to request public records just because they know it's pain in the neck and it drives and it's disruptive and it takes a lot of time with the clerk and it's just nonsense. And I mean, again, 3 public requests per year, because they'll ask over and over of different things for no reason at all, just because they know it. Because they have a problem with clerk or with whoever, and they just know it's a nuisance. If it's a legitimate one, that's fine, I get that, everybody has the right to see it. But they also have a right to come in and look at the records, they don't have to be provided. So. And I just think that there should be something tightened up that, I mean, this is crazy, this is going on every month. Twice a month, this guy comes to every meeting and causes problems. There should be something that says can't come anymore.
Rep. Nugent?
I was just wondering, I don't know if anyone knows the answer in this moment, but like as far as, I think about like when you're teaching, it's like classroom management tends to be like the better that is, that reduces disruption, or if there's some kind of meeting structure that could be put in place, or like a social worker that could come and talk to him. I don't know if there's other avenues that are not quite as far as like trying to change the law and potentially running up into free speech issues.
Rep. Waters Evans?
This reminds me of my children were younger. I used to tell them the complaint department is open and then say now is the time to complain. And then they would be like, this is the worst and I don't like broccoli. And then we'd be done and move on. For the most part, is you suggesting like, if his name is Bubba, we just have Bubba's complaint hour at the top of the agenda and then let it all get out first. So it is. I feel like I understand wanting to prevent these kind of disruptions and nuisance and everything, but also I am loath to change or create a law because there's one person who doesn't know how to behave. It seems like a lot of this is based on, I know there are people all over who don't behave well, but just because one person is particularly egregious right now, it doesn't seem like a reason to change the law. And also, I feel like I wish that there were another part of statute or something that we could change or amend to fix the law rather than the open meeting law, because I just hate putting any restrictions on this whatsoever. And unfortunately, Rep. Pinson about the people with the public records request, it's very annoying, but you can't limit it because of reporters need access to all of that stuff and they need to ask all the time. And if to say if you can do this if you're a reporter, then I mean, maybe that person's writing a book, they're a journalist and who's writing a nonfiction book and they need all those records. I just don't see, I'm just loath to limit any of these things, no matter how annoying it is. And as Wedge Council said the other day, we're opening ourselves up, we're welcoming in a way a certain amount of heckling and disruption and inconvenience by it's part of the democratic process. So I don't know what the answer is, but I feel nervous about changing these laws, about someone being a disruption, because maybe one person's disruption is another person's using their voice. And then who gets to decide?
Us. Rep. Ango?
Yeah, I think my question is for council. In the open meeting law statutes, at an open meeting, the public shall be given a reasonable opportunity to express its opinion on matters considered by the public body during the meeting, as long as the order is maintained. Public comment shall be subject to reasonable rules established by the chairperson. So is the problem not that we don't have it in statute, but that we have no consequence for individuals who are considered to be disruptive? And honestly, I know at a lot of meetings, people are very patient and let people talk over themselves for a little bit. But then there comes to be a point in time where the meeting cannot continue because the individual is so disruptive. So is it because we just don't have any consequence?
So you're all kind of lancing the heart of this issue from different angles. Yes, the issue isn't that legislative bodies, for example, don't have the authority to adopt rules governing public comment and potentially to have an individual room. The issue is that if the conduct falls short of the articulable standard that we have from the Supreme Court of Vermont, it is very difficult for a law enforcement officer or for the prosecuting entity such as the state's attorney to bring a charge for disturbing the peace, and in this case, the disruption of a lawful assembly, which means that individual faces essentially no consequences for their conduct in that meeting and can return the following week or the following day or whenever the public body is next meeting. Going back to Representative Pinson's question, something that I usually note in the introduction to the open meeting law at the beginning of the biennium is that the open meeting law is completely a creature of statute. Talk a lot about different rights that are associated with the open meeting law because it exists, but it is not required by the Vermont Constitution, is not required by the United States Constitution that the open meeting law be constructed this way. As a matter of fact, there's no requirement at all that the open meeting law even exists. This is something the General Assembly put together in the 1970s, along with many other states. But the forum has been created. You have established procedures for how the meetings operate, including potential procedures for how the public engages with the public body under the open meeting law. On that basis, you have established, again, a forum where members of the public can exercise rights that are separate from the open meeting law, but implicated by their participation and attendance at open meetings. That's where you're getting into the tangle. And Representative Pincinel asked, can someone just be excluded potentially indefinitely? That is something that Representative Harrison's bill started to get into as one of the consequences of being cited for disturbing the peace. That individual would only be able to attend virtually moving forward. You have other potential avenues that you could explore, provided that you don't frustrate an individual's First Amendment right to speech or to assemble, which is a more complicated analysis, but there are avenues that you can pursue. And for your public records question, there are states that have what are known as vexatious and harassing standards for public records requests. Vermont is not one of them.
And there, and I saw a hand creeping up there, so we'll go 1 and 2.
Okay, so my comment regarding the request wasn't about reporters. It's about that Joe citizen that is just antagonistic. And I mean, yeah.
Same thing with Bloods.
Yeah. But it's I wasn't referring to any reporters. I've never had reporters ask for public record requests. They usually come in and do their search themselves. It's the Joe Smith and the community that just wants to cause trouble.
Manipulating the system for the purpose
Yes.
of, yes. Rep. Nugent.
What Lisa read out kind of made me, I'm sorry, Pingo.
We're formally informal right now.
Yeah, it made me wonder, and so what, council was saying, if there could be other rules that could be created that would address the vexatious and other word behavior. It sounds like it's sort of up to the body itself to decide what is okay in that meeting and what's not. And it seems pretty unreasonable to expect to be able to continue to interrupt a meeting over and over again. So I guess from my perspective, whatever rules or structure can and need to be in place for that to be addressed is important. And also on the other side, like somebody's taking up that much space and resources and bandwidth of the public officials and body, is taking it away from everyone else who's sits there and waiting for information or other purposes. So
Yeah, I think it was Tucker that said it, but
Yeah. Rep. Morgan, it's all yours.
but at our select board meetings, we have our public forum and we limit it to 5 minutes per person. Not to exceed, because otherwise you could be in a chasing something for 20-25 minutes and you never get to the heart of your meeting. Because you can make that individual word rules that you're permitted to.
And Hango and then Stone.
I think in answer to Rep. Morgan, it's great when it works. Because school board, we also have like a 2-minute limit. You say your thing, that's it. Nobody responds to you, you're done. But when people don't respect those guidelines, that's when the whole thing falls apart and gets out of hand. And it doesn't seem like there's any authority to shut it down, except for literally shutting it down, which means shutting out the rest of the public.
I think we've done that once before.
And like seizing the activity of the meeting as well. Rep. Stone, then Waters Evans.
I'm
gonna ask you about if you're familiar with the Brown Act, the California open meeting law. Looks like they have, I can send it to the whole committee, but they have like a really robust section in their open meeting law about what's allowable and not allowable in public meetings and what's considered be like inappropriate, what warrants being kicked out, what you have to do before. And then they also have the thing you were talking about that would address Rep. Pincinel's part about the vexatious burdensome requests. So if you want a place to look, it looks like California's open meeting law entitled the Brown Act. Has a lot of the stuff that we're talking about in it. I can email it to y'all. You know.
I'll like read it. I want to be aware that,
Sure. So the one thing that just I keep thinking about is that yeah, I'm being slightly hypocritical or contradicting myself right now, which is that I hate putting restrictions on open meeting law, but also I keep thinking about what Tucker said the other day about how a person who's being disruptive in these meetings is preventing everyone else in the room from their First Amendment right to assemble, be part of a meeting and say what they think. And so I don't know. I wonder if this is gonna take a whole other bit of work, maybe, about coming up with some guidelines for behavior at a meeting, like Rep. Stone was just talking about, but maybe not part of this, our original big open meeting law bill, but maybe a separate one that really tackles individually, or if we have time in the next couple of weeks, just to figure that.
this is the vehicle that is.
This is it.
Still moving, yes. Hang on, and then you're gonna go to the sponsor.
Okay, I like what Rep. Waters Evans just mentioned. Does this prevent the rest of the public from attending the meeting and participating in it? And that made me think to ask, I have kind of forgotten exactly what sentence out of H-145 that we're considering for language. And if that would be like a temporary, I don't want to call it a placeholder because
Substantially impairs the conduct of a meeting of a public body.
okay, so that would give a little more teeth to the authority of the public body to shut down the interaction that's happening and hopefully move on for the rest of the meeting. And then maybe we could do, as Rep. Stone suggests, look at laws in other states, and Rep. Waters Evans just mentioned doing a deeper dive into what exists and could we incorporate it into our laws? Because honestly, if other states have laws against this type of behavior, maybe we should consider it.
I for
Thanks for
one would
having
be
that.
totally willing to hold the bill a little longer to do a diligent job vetting this component. And with that segue to Ms. Buxton, how are you? Please join us.
Hello, committee. Hi. You've met me before. I'm Sarah Buxton. I'm a former member of the House, but I'm also a municipal attorney. I represent about 24 different communities around the state, one of which was just struggling with an issue that was being discussed when we came in. People disrupting the office, public records requests that are shutting down operations. But here today, I've been asked to come in and speak because I'm on the select board in Mendon, and I'm also on the planning commission in Mendon. And some of what Sheriff Fox and his deputies have been dealing with is specific to the meetings that I and my community members attend. I do have some links, although you may not have the time for this, and I'm happy just to share them if you would like to watch some of these clips from some of our meetings over the past year. I'm sorry to say this, but you probably shouldn't watch them when there are children in the room. That is how bad it is. And these are on, and they will continue to be on publicly available sites for quite a while. But we have citizens who are not once, not twice, every single meeting. Okay, maybe missing one every 2 months, coming in, calling people hideous names, people who are volunteers in our community, who are lawyers, one of which the chair of our planning commission is our court administrator, Terry Corsones, a lovely woman, and just being terrible to those people, to our citizens who are trying to operate our government. And they are effectively shutting down government in Mendon. We had to close our office. It is now closed to the public and has been for over a year because of threatening behavior. There are laws that are in place, and I do respect this tension here. There are laws in place that do allow us to do some things to protect our staff, our employees, and members of the public. When we closed down our town clerk, closed down our office, we lost our town clerk. We have a new one. We are by appointment only. We have a contract for $60,000 with the Rutland County Sheriff's Office. We have at least one public meeting a week, whether it's select board, planning commission, ZBA. The town of Mendon on March 10th, just updated our rules of conduct and procedure at public meetings. And in it now, we are very clear that access to the public building when a meeting will take place will be limited to members of the public body, town staff, public safety officials, and invited members of the public. For the purposes of setting up a room before the meeting is called to order, no members of the public are allowed inside the building until law enforcement is present. This has caused people to have to sit outside. I'm talking about some of our senior citizens sitting out in the cold with this individual for quite a while. A few months ago, actually it was in April, I have a little affidavit here. The sheriff made an arrest on his way to a meeting, was delayed by 30 minutes. Folks had to wait outside because it is not safe for all of us to be inside that building when law enforcement isn't there. If law enforcement can't make it, in our rules, we adjourn the meeting, we rewarn it. And this has happened. Also, it's not only Mendon. I would come here at a different time with my clients and have those other towns speak for themselves. But this is a very real issue. And I, as a former member of this body, acknowledge that this body has had to really consider its safety and balance those rights of the public and the duties that you have to get your work done. And you've made changes to the operational rules of your meetings and of your building. I think municipalities need to have some of those same protections. A very small first step would be to include in the disorderly conduct version of what Rep. Harrison presented, that if a person disrupts the how do we phrase it? It was the substantially impairs the effective conduct of a meeting of a public body. That would be great. But that's not it, because if you're suggesting some more work in the next few weeks or even on an ongoing basis into next year, I think there are a number of communities who could come up with some really helpful suggestions, which might include another part of Rep. Harrison's bill, where if a person is so disruptive and they are found to be so under already adopted, municipalities have to do their work and they have to adopt their rules of conduct and make sure the conduct that is allowed or not allowed is known to the public. They should be able to perhaps say to someone, if you've disrupted a meeting and you've been kicked out under the rules, you're in timeout. You can participate in meetings, but you can do it virtually for 30, 60 or whatever days. It's like a cooling off period. You are not being denied any access to government or business or to the public's the business of the public body. But these are simple tools that I think we need to begin to consider. I just want to circle back just because this affidavit is sitting right here. The meeting that I spoke of about a month ago when the sheriff was running late and you're texting and our rules said we can't open the door until that happens. This citizen was extremely upset. He was banging on the door. There were 2 citizens who were out in the parking lot also patiently waiting for the meeting to start. He said some really terrible things, but also was acting in a way in this citizen's words, based on my past knowledge and experience with this person, his behavior caused me to believe that he may cause a threat to my safety. So I decided to return to my car while I waited for law enforcement to arrive. I came up to his car, was yelling at him about me, that he's upset with me. And as a public official, I am subject to some amount of criticism and people saying bad things about me. That's not my concern so much as the fact that there are people who aren't coming to our meetings anymore, who aren't participating, who aren't logging on to the go-to meeting and feeling like they're part of a community. You can't even come in and just casually talk with your neighbor as the meeting's getting started, because we won't let you do that anymore because it doesn't allow for the effective conduct of our meetings. So I would just urge you to, perhaps at least provide some initial support in considering that sentence around the disorderly conduct statute, but to continue this conversation. And, I'd be happy to bring in a couple of folks from the Northeast Kingdom. I know the town of Burke is one, was on the phone with them yesterday. Well, they had someone coming into their office, stopping work for the town clerk, the treasurer, everyone who was in the office for the entire morning until the state police and the sheriff could get there and walk the guy out. And this is a pretty regular occurrence in terms of the amount of disruption to the business of the local folks. So in that case, it wasn't a meeting of the public body. That was another issue that isn't really open meeting law. So I understand that may require some other consideration by this body, and potentially, it's to do next year or something like that. But I'm happy to show you the clips, but I'm also reluctant to do so in public, and I'm happy just to send them to you and you can.
I think that would probably be the best course of action, is not to put that type of conduct on.
Yes. Yes.
Content just like out in the ether right now, but I do appreciate you sending it to us so we have something to put into like a lived experience. Any questions for?
I just sorry to interrupt. I do have another.
Oh, please fire away, Sheriff.
I have another engagement at 3:00. So if everyone's done with any questions for me, I'm gonna head to that one.
Any questions for the sheriff before he has to go to his next appointment? Nope. No, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
All right, back to the original question at hand. Questions for Buxton? All right. Is our 3:00 here?
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. How we just transitioned seamlessly.
Thank you.
Into the 3:00 Charlie Baker. Mr. Baker, how are you?
Very well, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having me. For the record, Charlie Baker from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, testifying on behalf of the state's RPCs.
Wonderful. We're continuing work on S59. Got my number right? Yes, got my number right. And we've been taking a lot of feedback from your organization and whatnot. So we were just, looking to hear your thoughts on the new language and perspective in and around some of the other concerns that you had during this process.
Yes, thank you. I think Catherine Dimitrick provided some comments, I think about 3 weeks ago, April 17. And I think the request I got about testifying was related to, I'm not sure if I'm going to get the reference exactly right, but it was under section 6 for local public bodies. I'm looking at, I guess, bottom of page 3 on the top of page 4. And about that new sentence about this subdivision not applying to gatherings of a public body for purposes of a site inspection or field visit. And I think we were really just partly we're mirroring the language that is above for the state bodies, and just trying to convey that local public bodies have the same issues as state bodies that make that effort challenging. And I don't know if there was more of a question that folks thought we might be able to help with.
Yes, I could.
Please go right ahead.
Thank you, Charlie. I was the individual who asked to have you back in just to reiterate what your intent was and why you thought that this was important to keep this language in the current version of the bill. And if you had just maybe 1 or 2 specific instances where you could think of that this would be helpful to have the language be like this.
Yeah, I think in particular, I think development review boards, being able to just go out to see a site. So it'd be helpful to be able to have that. You know, I don't think they'd be making decisions out in the field, but they are together. And so having this clear language that is in the draft would be very helpful to those in particular that committee, but probably some others too. It could be a select board going to visit a site. I can imagine giving other conversations happening in the building there around like the CHIP financing tool that's in the housing bill. A select board might want to go check out a site. So anyway, that's kind of where we were coming from, and especially trying to parallel the same authority that was being provided to the state public bodies further up in the draft.
Thank you.
Yeah, the state language is I think at the top of page 3. If I'm reading the you're still on draft number 1.1 dated yesterday. Yeah.
And the scenarios that you're describing too, like those bodies that would be out in the field would still have to go, and any formal position would have to be taken within the structure of a called warrant meeting, et cetera, correct?
Exactly, right. Yeah. So they would, go check things out in the field, not make any decisions there, bring it back to the meeting room, and then be able to make decisions in the public view normally as you're kind of used to.
Gotcha. Yeah, we just had another conversation previous to you showing up where it seems like we're going to take a little bit more testimony on another piece. So we were looking at we're probably going to push out taking a formal position on this a little bit further than we originally anticipated. So
understood.
I guess that's like, we honed it in earlier today, but we got 2 more pieces that are a bit more of a conversation piece now. Any other questions for Mr. Baker right now? Does not appear to be.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're our
Appreciate
last guest of the day. I think everybody's kind of
Thank you.
running out of steam. So
Thank you for all your work.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you, Charlie.
Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. All right, folks. That's all we have for formal conversation today. We definitely got a couple of things to doodle on. And I think we did a good job with this latest draft, honing in the work over the last couple of weeks. And we got a couple more threads to tug at here to figure out if there's something to figure out. With that, any other further discussion from the table before we wrap for the day?
So then 9:30 will be iced tomorrow morning.
No, 9:30, we have Secretary of State coming.
Yeah, that's still going on.
And that's with respect to this language we just discussed with Mr. Baker.
Yep.
That's right.
All right, folks. Showing no hands, no further conversation. I'm gonna take this offline.